Sullivan's Travels from 1941 is a classic Sturges comedy. Join us as we re-examine this amazing film and offer our thoughts here on 1,000 Movies Before You Die. Welcome back to another episode of 1,000 Movies Before You Die. I'm Nathan, and this is my buddy Toby, and we watch old movies and comment on them, basically.
That's right. That's it.
Today's movie is Sullivan's Travels, and we did a short kind of intro video earlier on the channel about that, but we thought now that we've both seen it, we thought we'd have a proper discussion about it. So do you mind sharing a bit of the details on the film?
Yeah, so the film is Preston Sturges, right? It stars Joel McCrea and Veronica Lake. Preston Sturges wrote and directed it. He was one of the first directors actually to do that. I think my research sort of says he was the first. That's hard to believe. I thought Hitchcock did that before, but Hitchcock didn't write a lot of his stuff.
No, I don't think he wrote any. I don't think he wrote any. He was the director.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, like this guy. And there was something where the director got sick or something, and then he ended up not this movie, but another one. And so yeah, he was sort of the first guy to do this, and this is another one of his that he wrote and directed, and it's got his stamp, all over it. It's also starring the Sturges players, which you'll see them in a lot of his movies. The one guy is William Demarest, I think. Another guy is something Grieg, the butler, right? And then Jimmy Conlon is the guy at the prison camp, sort of the guy who sort of helps him, right? And you'll see these guys in just various different iterations in basically all the ones I've seen so far of Sturges, and I've seen most of his. And yeah, these guys are really sharp at delivering that dialogue and stuff. So yeah, so it's 1941. Right. And, why don't you give us a little plot synopsis?
Sure. Yeah. So Joel McCrea's a very earnest movie star, director, writer, Hollywood celebrity that is looking to do a film, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But he wants to really get into the role and to really know what it's like to be poor and without options and so forth. So he goes to try and do that, and Hollywood keeps somehow roping him back. But along the way, he meets Veronica Lake, and they end up traveling together, and eventually they complete the quote unquote experiment. He gets a chance to really see what it was like to be poor and down on your luck, and then things take a bit of a turn, and suddenly he ends up actually being in that situation and having to deal with that in reality. And then, but he manages to extricate himself from that and cue the happy ending. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's just, what'd you think of it?
Well, I really liked it. It's a couple things like, so you mentioned the Sturges players there. It's so interesting how that is not a thing in Hollywood anymore. And I'm not even sure the last time that was
exactly.
a thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Maybe the closest.
I can only think of the Dead End Kids. That's the only ones I can really think of that show up like in a lot of these movies. These sort of bratty New Yorkers, right? But I think a lot of the guys did have, like, different directors had sort of people they like to work with, right? Like you see it with, I think, Lubitsch and stuff. But yeah, these guys are pretty distinct.
In modern terms, I think you might argue that Tarantino has his favorites. You've got Samuel L. Jackson and Michael Madsen and so forth that are usually in Tarantino movies. There's also the Rat Pack of the 80s, but it's really not a thing anymore. So it's kind of interesting that they have the Sturges players. But it also reminded me very much about how in today's era of special effects and things going on that we really lost the really witty dialogue. There's a scene in Sullivan's Travels where it's just Joel McCrea and Veronica Lake driving in the car for, I don't know, it was probably, I don't know if it was 5 minutes, but it was a long time. And it's just them talking. It's their back and forth. It's their repartee, and that's the entertaining. That's what's fun about it is it's about the dialogue, and there's lots of movies that exemplify that from that era, but it really just shone that light on. It's like, geez, like they used to actually write really snappy dialogue.
Oh, it's so snappy, and it's it's poignant, it's hilarious, right?
Yeah,
It says something, important, like the butler has a great speech, where he talks about, they're all kind of offended at his plan, right? So his
yes,
plan is, he has written, what is it, hey hey in the haystack and ants in your pants, right,
ants
are
in your
sort of the
plants,
titles.
ants in your
Ants in your
plants.
plants.
Yes,
Ants in your plants, and they keep saying of 1940 something, right?
yeah,
So it's like
yeah,
ants in your plants, 19 something, and you're right, he's earnest, but it's kind of like there's so many awesome themes in this, right? So
yeah.
he's a great at what he does, right? He writes comedies and he directs comedies. I don't know if he writes them, but he certainly directs these
Mhm.
fluffy. They make a lot of money. They make people happy. But no, he wants to tell this great tragedy of the working man and the struggles and like the great American film, and he just seems like the wrong guy
Yeah,
to pull it off, and he knows it, right? So
yeah,
like he recognizes that he's the wrong guy, and he okay, this is why he has to go on this quest because he has no idea. He's totally pampered,
yeah.
like he's got this gorgeous swimming pool, and you got to think back then a pool was probably
Oh,
like a huge luxury, like it's
yeah,
not like today where everybody's got a pool. It's he's super pampered,
yeah.
and he recognizes, how can I tell this story honestly? And you can tell that it for him it has to be a tragedy. Like it has to
Mhm.
be this heavy. And as he goes on this quest, I like often when he starts talking to people. And again, you're right about the dialogue. It's like the dialogue is the real star in this film,
Mhm.
right? And he keeps trying to bring out the two hobos in the train. He's like, "So what do you think of the labor situation?"
Yeah,
And everyone, and he does that a few times. And these working class people, like, they don't want to talk about that, right? Like
yeah,
they're living this, and they all seem a lot more cheery than he sort of expects them to be, right? And
yeah.
they're all sort of bucking it and have a positive attitude. It's almost like he, feels like they shouldn't have that, they know
Mhm.
it should be dark and depressed, and so he gets into all these hilarious, I don't know, events, right,
Yeah,
that keep happening to him.
yeah. And I just love how the Hollywood keeps, he always seems to end up in Hollywood or tied into the
Exactly.
wherever he
So he gets on
goes.
a train. They're back in Hollywood, and then at one point they pull into this station, and oh, where are we? I don't know, probably Hollywood.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
says to Veronica Lake. So Veronica Lake shows up in the diner.
yes,
I guess she's sort of at the end of her rope. She wanted to be an actress, and she's waiting, I guess, for the bus. I think
yep,
to leave, right? So
yeah.
she was not an actress, and unbeknownst to her, has met obviously the guy who could completely give her the
Mhm.
career she wants, but she has to buy him, something there. I think she buys him a coffee or food, I think, right? She buys him
Yeah.
breakfast.
I think it's a
So
donut and
he's,
coffee, I think. I can't remember the term he used. It's like a
yeah.
dunker or something with a coffee.
And then somebody else gives him, then at that stop, it turns out the diner, they don't have enough money for the donut, and the guy just gives it to them, and
Yes.
he's like, oh, this place, what is the name of this place of like human kindness? He's like, Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now they're in Vegas. So I love that about the film, how he just can't shake. And then they call it a land yacht, that giant
Yep.
bus. So basically, at the beginning, he's trying to go off on his own, but his producers and all these people, he's got a butler, he's got a maid, he's got his producer, he's got like somebody who's journaling the whole thing,
Yep.
right? And these people are all on this giant land yacht, which is just this huge sort of tour bus,
Mhm.
right? And he's sort of, I guess he's hitchhiking, and this kid that kid picks him up in the race car thing. Do you remember that?
Yeah. 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 The
Oh,
kid.
I don't know what he's some sort of a soap racer, it's called, or something like that, like some homemade. But the thing goes pretty good for a
Yeah, it's not
homemade
bad.
car. Right? So then you get this insane slapstick scene, where the guy, they're all being thrown around in the bus. Actually, there is a point I want to the actor who plays the black chef, right?
Mm-hmm.
He shows up in I can't remember the movie. I think I did it on the channel. The one, it's
Palm
the city
Beach,
in
right?
Florida.
Palm
Yes, that's
Beach.
right. So they're on a train, and I think that's the one where, again, the Sturgis players are like these hunters on the train, and they're like shooting up the train, and this chef is also on the train, and he's doing the slapstick stuff, right? And it's sort of weird to watch today because it's completely racist. It's
Yeah.
a completely buffoon, but I don't, you know, the actor is doing a fantastic job
Yeah.
portraying it, and it's hilarious, right? And
Yeah.
it's all in the way he's doing it. So it's a very complicated sort of thing whenever I'm watching it, because on the one hand, you're admittedly, this is written in the most racist, condescending
Mm-hmm.
way, right? Trying to make the most sort of racist tropes funny,
Mm-hmm.
and so you kind of feel guilty about laughing at it, but then you think, but this actor is doing a fantastic
Yeah.
job, right? And it
Yeah.
is funny. So, it's sort of this problematic scene, but I think it works if you allow yourself to appreciate the actor and the acting,
Yes.
right? Because it is sort of a little bit of
And hey, he's a
a
star.
scratch on the record,
He's in a classic film, that'll
exactly. Yeah.
stand the test
And
of
so you
time.
don't just want to dismiss it, like you
Yeah.
don't want Criterion to cut it out or something, right? They'd
No,
be like,
no,
oh,
no.
it's just terrible, right?
Because I don't know, like it was funny, but it was, I don't know, maybe I'm missing it, but I don't know if it was particularly racist. It was just he was just dealing with the land yacht swaying around and all that stuff. It
Yeah, I
just
think
happened
just
to laugh. I don't know.
the way they've got him talking and acting, right? Like they've got him a
Hmm.
really, yeah, they've just make him sound really stupid, and
Yeah.
make him sound
Yeah.
really. They do that in a lot of Sturgis
Yeah.
movies, but he always has like these fantastic actors doing it, and
Mhm.
so it's, yeah, I always enjoy it, but then I'm always a little troubled by my enjoying of it. you know
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, Criterion Collection has been known for erasing some things, so it
Yeah.
certainly would
I
never
don't know.
want to see
I'm a
that
fan of
happen, right?
preserving the history, even
Absolutely.
if it's
No matter
ugly.
how bad it is, you want to, and this
Yeah.
isn't that bad, but it
No.
is a scene that a lot of modern audiences could have a problem with, right?
Mickey Rooney
So
and
I did
Breakfast
want
at
to address it.
Tiffany's. Mickey Rooney and at Tiffany's, that's racist. This, I can let it slide.
Yes, there's a lot of that stuff in, but you know
Yeah.
what? You have to accept it in the time that you're watching it, right? I
Yes,
mean,
exactly.
it's not just, I mean, it's filled with sexism, I mean, but
Yeah.
it's important to see what it was like back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, so going back to that, the land yacht scene, so you get a lot of zany slapstick going on there,
Yeah.
really physical stuff, and then at one point they do actually get the hardship, like
Mm,
I guess he leaves them in Vegas. That's what happens. He's like, why don't you guys just stay here in Vegas? And they're
yeah.
happy with that. And so they go ahead and they gamble or whatever they're doing in Vegas. And him and Veronica Lake, they actually do. You see them like, they look like they've got fleas scratching or
Yeah.
bed bugs or something. And
Yeah.
and I like that because you do see some hardship there that he's going through, right? And some
Mhm.
character development is happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say, well, what did you like best about it? If there's one or two things, or were there any
I think
aspects to it?
I guess I sort of like this, I don't know, the sort of story in a story, how he's trying to write
Hmm.
this novel is kind of happening to him, right? Because at the end he finds himself in the exact situation that he can't get out of, right? I
Yeah.
mean, he gets and it I like the way it portrays the poverty in sort of this funny way. And I guess the overall thing I like about it is the overall theme, which is, and Sturgis he was commenting on some of his, people like Capra, who he thought did great comedy, but then we're getting a little too serious for their britches, and
Hmm.
we're trying to do too much social commentary. And he was trying to say, look,
Yeah.
just be funny.
Yeah.
You don't have to get all serious. And in fact, that's what these people really want. They don't need you to reflect back all this depressing crap to them.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, that's kind of what your typical artsy sort of bourgeois person watches, right?
Yeah.
The average working class person, they're looking for some escape, certainly back then, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they want to laugh. And I love that scene where he notices, it's like this black church. That's the other thing I like everyone is helping. You get
Yeah.
this, and I guess at the time there were these like legions or armies of poor men just roaming the United States, right? Like
Well,
looking for
remember
work.
the timing of this was just towards the end of the Great Depression, right? So this
Yeah,
was the reality that had been the case for about a decade, where this, it was very much of its time. It seems like there,
yeah,
it's just commenting on poverty in general. No, this was a way of life and had been for 10 years until World War II arrived. And so I think it was very much born of its time. It was
yeah,
commenting on the depression essentially, because he probably started writing it maybe in the late 30s, early 40s, something like that. It came
yeah,
out in 41, so the U.S. was on the brink of World War II, if not in it already. When this, I don't know what the release date of the film was, but there's a lot of dark things happening, and ultimately, that was it was very much born of the same circumstances that created the Little Rascals, for example.
yeah,
It's very much of that ilk, and in a way, I almost see it as being part of the same, through line
yeah.
as the Little Rascals. It's obviously the Little Rascals, but for adults. A little bit more.
And it is sort of that, like, you do get that in the 30s, especially. Yeah, you get this more sense of like the common man. I find like when
Mhm.
you get into the late 40s and 50s that there's more glamour and stuff. And in fact, they weren't allowed, like in the 50s, talking about when we talk about white heat, they weren't allowed to make Cody Jared the way he was due to poverty. So by the
Mhm.
time the 50s roll around and you get the Cold War, right, you're now are like, well, we don't want to show. So you wouldn't have been able to do this film because they wouldn't have wanted to show this sort of poverty, right?
Mhm.
And they wouldn't, you things like uh what's the Steinbeck
Grapes
novel?
of Wrath.
The Yeah, that one. So they were like, they don't want movies like that anymore. They want
Yeah.
movies that sort of show the wonders of capitalism, right? So you do
Yeah.
get a complete change in the 50s, and in the 30s, you do get a sense of a country that is in a lot more poverty
Mhm.
than later. And you see this throughout this film. I mean, you get a real sense that there's an entire class, not like today, where yes, of course, there's people struggling, but there's just way more of this,
Mhm.
and just people on the move, right? And
Yeah. Well, there
and
wasn't the social safety net that is in
yeah,
place. So if you couldn't pay the bank and you lost your farm, well, you had to go somewhere. There was no welfare, there was no social security, there was nothing like that. So,
yeah,
it was a very different time, and that's where all these social programs came from, was in an attempt to deal with and help people in those circumstances. So,
yeah.
was there anything about it that you didn't like so much, or?
No, not really. Like I found like there's all the vignettes, the when he does finally, he basically, I guess it's all done. It's all, and then I don't know oh yeah, that's right. He decides to hand out money to everybody, right?
Yes.
And then he gets hit on the head, and somebody, which I like as well, because the film shows that, later on we see that the way he gets to see that movie is it's a black church,
Yeah.
a very poverty stricken black church that opens its doors to these convicts, right?
Yeah.
And it's really brutal, how so basically he's handing out money, and some homeless guy or a guy on the street sees it,
Hmm.
and in the film, not painting everyone as helping and in this sort of glorified way. This guy is, he's gonna steal the money, right? So
Mhm.
it shows sort of an evil hobo as well.
Yeah.
And
He
his
gets
death scene is a bit ridiculous.
yeah.
He can't get out of the way of that train, right?
Yes.
He's going left, he's going right, and he gets crushed. So
Yeah,
he gets his comeuppance
that was a bit
really
silly, that
fast.
bit.
So, but it works because he's wearing
Yeah, oh
his
yeah, no, it all
Sullivan's
comes
coat.
together. Yeah.
So and then you see the system set up, to deal with it. So he doesn't really have any legal representation. He's thrown into this horrible labor camp where the
Yeah.
guy is like, he doesn't even come across as this super evil guy, but he's just regularly beaten his convicts under, in his charge. So like this system where it's basically the state is providing slave labor
Yeah.
to this farm or whatever, and it's the farm is probably kicking back money to the
Yeah,
state.
I know.
And
Yeah.
and I love the way because I was wondering, how's he going to get out of this. The way he gets out of it is so simple and brilliant. He
Yeah. It
just
was
says,
very
I'm the one
clever.
who murdered basically himself,
Yeah.
right? Because they're
Yeah.
looking for the killer.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just like, I love the way
Although
it
it's
wraps up.
yeah, although it's interesting, like he still was convicted though. Like, how did he get out of jail?
Yes.
Like,
That's right.
I guess they just paid a bunch of
Everything.
money and he
Yeah.
goes back to his privileged life.
In that system, I'm sure just, a
Yeah.
little bit of money to this judge, a little bit of money
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. That was the only thing. I'm
Um,
like, well, how did he get out of jail though? Because so what if they know he's alive? It doesn't mean he's free to go.
yes.
Apparently it is. So
I mean, ultimately, he did hit that dude in the head
yeah.
with the rock,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
So
that's why
like
he's
why
there.
does it change anything that he's alive versus they think he's dead? It doesn't change anything. So
Yeah, he still hit the guy. Yeah, I
yeah.
mean,
So
like, what
then
was the
again,
reason? I
it's a
guess because
comedy. You don't want
because
to
he was
think
very confused. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so he would have.
yeah, but
Um,
you can't you got to roll with it. It's a comedy. You have the mandatory happy ending and that kind of
what
thing.
did you think of Veronica Lake in the picture?
I really liked her, and it's funny because I'd heard her name, and I don't think I'd ever seen anything with her in it. She had quite a tragic life actually.
Hmm.
I don't know if I did some reading about her, and it was, she had her kind of peak in fame and so forth, and then but alcoholism actually was that brought her down. She was
Wow.
began to go off the rails that way, and
Yeah.
she at one point was like out of Hollywood, waiting tables in New York because she said she liked people and
Ouch.
she was
Yeah.
estranged from her kids, and she died at like age 50 of
Yikes.
cirrhosis of the liver. So she was like a very tragic short
Yeah.
life. And Joel
Just
McCrea,
burning
by
a.
by contrast, was a uh, outspoken Christian, wealthy, long-lived. I think he died at 94 or something like that.
Wow. Wow.
And it's interesting because he was actually quite wealthy himself.
Oh, wow.
Even before this movie, he bought a lot of land and he was a rancher. And his
Yeah.
joke was that he basically did movies so he could afford to ranch full time. Like that was his thing.
Wow.
And he owned a bunch of land out in I think Texas area, and yeah, he was quite wealthy and very he married his wife at a very young age, and they were together through thick and thin through the whole thing. And he was very upstanding individual actually for for a Hollywood star
Yeah.
who's actually of stellar reputation. So
I think he fits that role really well, and I think that's the thing about Veronica Lake. Like, she shouldn't fit that role well because, I mean, she's famous for playing opposite Alan Ladd in a lot of the sort of really sort of hard bitten noirs,
yes,
right? That she's in with him. There's one where he's a killer, something like This Gun for Hire, I
yeah.
think.
And
And
McRae was
you
became more of
could
a Western, yeah,
yeah,
the
he's
westerns.
yeah. Just watched Shane recently, but the funny thing about him is he was really short, right? And you can tell that like as soon as she gets out of that dress, like she's sitting there by his pool, her lovely gams, her legs are sticking out, and you'd think, wow, this statuesque. But then you see her when she's dressed as a hobo, and she looks hilarious. She looks like she's a 10-year-old boy,
I know.
She's super small. I don't know if Joel McCrea is just really tall,
No,
but
I
she
actually did
looks
look that
so
up.
small.
I looked it up. Joel McCrea was 6'2", and
Okay.
Veronica Lake was 4'9", I think, 4'10". Oh yeah,
That's hilarious.
she was pretty
So she
small.
looks so funny, like in that when she's dressed as a boy, and
Yeah. Well, you got
it
to
does.
send. So in the car scene when they're that we mentioned earlier, apparently she had to sit on like a bunch of cushions so it didn't
Oh my
look
gosh.
totally ridiculous with her just,
So she's perfect for Alan Ladd because that was always his thing. They always had to get the camera angles right because he's a very kind of a short guy, right?
Yeah.
And he always plays like I like Alan Ladd, but it's hard for me to take him as a tough guy because he's so tiny, right?
Yeah.
And unlike Bogart, who also is tiny, he doesn't seem to have that power presence, but
Yeah.
it kind of works, right? But
Yeah.
once you find out how short he is, it almost sort of dissolves. But she, like she's sort of the real sort of glamour
Yeah.
girl. Like her hair is really glamorous. So I
The
think just
they
putting
called it a
her
peekaboo hairstyle, I think, because she had
so
some hair that would,
yes, which is
so
sort
she
of
goes,
the cover of this movie too,
yeah,
right? Is just
yeah.
her caricature on it or whatever.
That was
And
her thing.
so to put her into this sort of poverty role, it's a really cool juxtaposition, I find, to have her playing the character that she plays. And I thought, I think really did a really good job. She's really cute in it, right? She's
Yeah.
really, he gets a lot of grief from people when they find out he's rich, especially from her, right? She's very like, what do you mean you're pretending,
Mhm.
and his butler too, right? Like a lot of
Yeah.
people they're offended by the fact,
Yeah.
they are in poverty. And it's like, what the hell do you mean you're gonna
Yeah.
just sort of do this as a lark, right? Which is never really played for serious,
Yeah.
which is another thing I like about this. There's some very serious themes
Hmm.
throughout this,
Yeah.
and yet it 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 touches them. It doesn't shy away from them,
Yeah.
and the overriding theme, which is basically the depressing story, the poignant story you want to tell.
Yeah.
Laughter is what's important, right?
Yes.
Laughter is the key, right? And he learns it in that church. What? Wait, I gotta go. What did you make of the first place that woman that sort of picks him up, like she's like hitting on him the whole time. I kind of
Yeah.
forgot about her. Do you remember her?
Yeah.
She's got some maid or something that lives, or it's her sister. They're
Yes. Oh, yes.
two
Yes.
sort of spinster sisters, and
Yes.
she like she locks him in the room. He has to escape out the window because she's
Yeah.
got like her sexual designs on him.
Yeah.
And he's just there to make some money, basically. Oh man, so it's it kind of has that road movie feel to it, right? Because
Yeah, a little bit.
he
Yeah.
goes from like
Yeah.
weird sort of whatever to
Yeah.
weird whatever, and that's another thing I love about this film, right? It
Yeah.
sort of takes him along to this sort of ultimate. He does sort of hit rock bottom, and then
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, so does he have an arc? Like, does he come out the end? I guess, yeah, he realizes that he's gonna stick to making ants in your pants.
Yeah. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
funny.
No, overall though, great movie. I really enjoyed it. And it's only 90 minutes. It feels like more of a full movie than that, but it's only 90 minutes long.
Yeah, yeah.
So, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it's fun throughout, and the dialogue's sharp throughout. So,
And there's the connection to kind of the present. I mean, that I looked it up. The Coen brothers, they took the name of their movie, "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou,"
yeah.
from like I thought this was a book or something that existed. No, like they invented that name in this
Yeah.
movie, and the Coen brothers. And if you think about the Coen brothers movie, it kind of fits a little bit into it's in the South, it's poor. You could imagine that that's the film he wanted to make.
Yeah.
and it's a comedy.
Yeah.
It makes you laugh. So yeah, it's just as soon as this film was done, I was like, this is definitely. I mean, it's to me, it's top 100 films for sure.
Yeah.
Right? I would probably put it because you have to put comedies in there. Like I would say
Yeah.
if it was the comedies, it's in the top 50 for sure
Yeah.
for me of all time. Like I just love its message. It's a poignant
Mhm.
message movie that's really, really funny.
Yeah.
And it might not be as hilarious to audiences today. Like I have an ear for that dialogue and I love it. If you
Yeah.
don't, I understand, but I think you'll still find it hilarious in many, many ways.
Yeah. That's great. So those are our thoughts on Sullivan's Travels. If you want to add your thoughts to the conversation, please comment down below and like and subscribe while you're at it. So thank you so much for watching this episode of 1,000 Movies Before You Die.
And join us next time when I think we'll do a horror movie. I think we said right.
Yes, that's the plan. It's
We're getting
October.
into October
Yeah.
exactly. All right.
I'll see you later.
Take care, guys.